Do you guys like cartoons? Well, I kinda do, although I'm very picky when it comes to the cartoons and shows I watch. As you could probably imagine from my channel, I'm the type of guy who usually just plays games as my main source of media, but occasionally, when I find something that catches my interest, I tend to enjoy a good cartoon every now and then. And from an analytical standpoint, something that also tends to catch my interest more often than not is something that's, as odd as this might sound, controversial. I'm not sure if you've noticed this from some of the stuff I've looked at over the past years, but I tend to enjoy taking a look at something that brewed up some hatred, either as a result of something within the thing itself, or because of the subject matter or people involved. That kind of stuff is interesting to me, and I love then taking a more objective look at the thing and seeing if it really deserves the hate. Given how big it's gotten, there's inevitably a lot of drama like this within the gaming industry nowadays, but sometimes it feels like there's even more of it elsewhere, such as in the cartoon industry. Now, I tend not to like to dabble in subjects I'm unfamiliar with, but who knows, this could be fun. I'm kind of in the mood to talk about something non-gaming anyway. So I went to some friends who actually are big fans of animation, and asked them about any potential interesting cartoons that have come out recently that are both kinda hated for one reason or another, and short enough that I could reasonably not spend an eternity on this video. And there are two names that often came up, and they're both very recent things. They are Hasbeen Hotel and Cans of Outlabels. Now, I've actually heard of these two before. I've seen a couple clips of Hasbeen online, and it looks pretty neat, although I have also seen some very close internet friends rant about it online, and I think Cans is a Kickstarter thing by an industry name. Meh, so I guess that's all I know. Anyway, let's check these two out and see if they're any good. I'm going to start with Hasbeen first because it seems to be the more popular one of the two, and honestly, it's the one that personally interests me more, just going off of short Twitter clips and stories I've heard. That and, well, when I made my post about me starting this video, pretty much every place I posted it started talking about Hasbeen as opposed to Cans, so I'm just gonna guess there's more interest in it. God, I almost feel bad for Cans. Regardless though, let's just start this anyway. Oh, but I've never reviewed a cartoon before, so where do I even begin? I guess I'll just start with the plot like I normally do.
At the end of the rainbow, there's happiness.
So we start off a song and, oh, fancy fireworks magic. I really like what I'm seeing so far. You know, I gotta say, I already really like the animation style. It kind of reminds me of some of the old Flash games and animations I loved as a kid, with its thick-ish lines, hellish color palettes, and cutesy yet dark visuals, but like way more professional, if that makes sense. Like it was made by a big studio or something. But the thing is, it wasn't. This is one thing I did know about this show going in, because it's something even friends I know who hated it seem to really respect about it. This entire cartoon was made by like less than a few dozen people, I think, and that is very impressive to me. I mean, sure, small teams make great stuff all the time, but typically you can tell when something is made by a small team. Heck, dare I say it, the animation itself already looks way more fluid and fun than a lot of the stuff I see nowadays. So our story begins with this blue guy and... oh, okay, never mind. Okay, so I'm assuming this is the protagonist. Again, I've never reviewed a cartoon before, can you tell? Games are so much slower paced than this. So this is Angel Dust. Yes, that is his name. Yes, that is a guy. And yes, the name is a reference to what you think it is. He is a spider, I think? The character design in the show is something else, and I kinda love it. He is an adult film star who's obsessed with sex and drugs. He gets off a cab into town to the side of this badass-looking snake man that they refuse to name-drop, destroying the entire city with a giant blimp with lasers. He's interrupted, however, by a woman with one eye before... the news. Okay, am I just slow, or is this moving a little fast? I'm way more used to shows taking their time with this kind of thing. I guess this is a pilot, though, so they probably did feel the need to fit every major character in at some point. I mean, they only have a half hour to do it, but... you know. Well, at least the news anchors are here to give us a little more context to what exactly is going on in this world. So, the cartoon has actually taken place in Hell this whole time. However, Hell has a bit of an overpopulation problem, so every year they hold an annual cleanse, which I can only interpret as just a bunch of people being killed. And as a result of this, a lot of people are fighting for territory and turf since a lot of demons just died.
I'm better at expressing myself and my goals through...
Who are those goats? I love those goats.
Is this a drawing?
Yes, that's...
No, it isn't. That page is blank. So we have two new characters. Charlie, the princess of hell, so basically Satan's daughter, and Vaggie, her friend, I think? Sister, maybe?
You can put that away. I don't touch the gays.
Oh, girlfriend, actually. Also, what the heck? I did not expect a line like that from this.
For his cannibal cooking segment. You might be some royal big shot, but that doesn't mean shit to me. I'm too rich and too influential to give a flying fuck about what some tuck-swearing demon princess wants to advertise.
Why is every movement accompanied by a sound effect? I don't know why that bothers me so much. So this all transitions to what I would call the A-plot of the whole cartoon. Charlie has this idea to, instead of kill people to solve Hell's whole overpopulation problem, what if we were to instead rehabilitate demons instead? Because if they're no longer evil, they can go to heaven as opposed to stay in hell. But wait a second, by that logic, wouldn't heaven be at risk of being overpopulated too? Never mind. Actually, hold on a second, where do the demons go after they're killed? Is there an afterlife after the afterlife or something? Am I thinking too deep into this? Probably.
Oh no.
The goats play piano!
So while you're causing porn addictions, vegan resurrecting predictions, Asian all-inclusive fiction, and
You know, the songs in this so far are, like, really freaking good. Now that I think about it, wasn't Charlie singing the first song too? I'm not sure if this is one of those cases where the character's singing voice is a different person from her normal voice actor, because I know cartoons do that sometimes, but, like, I don't know, whoever is voicing her here has a really good sing. Wait, why is she so big now? So anyway, her grand goal is to open a hotel to rehabilitate the demons. The Hasbeen Hotel, I take it. And, everyone hates this plan.
Wow! That was shit.
Hey, can someone clip that? Oh wait, she has proof that this hotel idea is a good one, because apparently she started already and already has a patron.
oh, and who might that be?
Oh, just someone named Angel Dust.
Angel Dust. Oh hey, that's the spider guy from earlier. But wait, didn't he... Oh no.
Fights, no pranks, no problematic language. Her words, not mine.
Wait a second, was that the Sonic Spring sound effect? What the heck is up with the sound effects in this show? So it turns out that the hotel idea wasn't really a success, as Angel Dust got involved in that whole turf war thing anyway. He's now fighting the snake guy with the Cyclops demon.
Oh, harder, Daddy.
Oh my god.
What's one little brawl gonna cause?
And we cut away before a climax to that battle. Hey, if you imagine this side being the front of his head, he looks a little bit like a dinosaur. I don't know why that caught my attention.
You win some, you lose a few hundred. It wasn't that bad anyway.
Yeah, he's in trouble.
I'm gonna kill him.
Too late, Toots. Wait! Would that make me double dead? Where exactly do I go?
Wait, the show actually asks that? I was joking. And no, I don't think they ever answer it. So they go back to the hotel, and my god, the whole place is a mess. Angel Dust eats a popsicle seductively, because of course he does. Charlie leaves a voicemail to Mom, and then she hears a creepy knock on the door. Oh wow, he is tall. Dude, he sounds cool. What is this?
The radio demon is at the door.
The radio demon. Well, I guess that explains the voice.
Excuse my sudden visit, but I saw your fiasco on the picture show, and
Never trust a guy who calls the news a picture show, by the way.
so many orphans.
Stop right there. Go.
Oh god, she has a spear. So he wants to help run the hotel because he's bored and thinks it'd be entertaining. No, really, that's actually his reason. Heck, he doesn't even believe in the hotel's cause. And apparently he's also, like, super evil, even by hell standards, and has destroyed and killed countless people. So, of course that means we should probably work with him. Oh, but don't worry, Charlie won't explicitly make a deal with him. Yeah, that'll stop him from doing ungodly things.
As Princess of Hell and...
Oh yeah, there's also that too. Hey, you think he might be trying to get involved here so maybe he can kill Satan himself later?
And what can you do, my effeminate fellow?
I can suck your dick.
Ha! No.
Okay, that's one of the scenes I saw on Twitter prior to doing this. I don't know why, but the comedic timing on that is, like, really funny to me for some reason. The radio demon decides to start helping by bringing on more staff because it's, just Charlie and Vaggie right now.
Why are you all women? Are there any men here? I'm sorry, that's rude.
Well, a man summoned you. Also, I know he's effeminate, but, like, holy crap.
Freedom and wheat, boys. Full.
Oh. Okay, whoever this guy is, I like him already.
You thought it would be some kind of big fucking riot just to pull me out of nowhere? You think I'm some kind of fucking clown?
Maybe.
God, with how this guy's audio is edited, it makes the comedic timing really hit home when it's done right.
So, what do you think?
This is amazing!
I'd say he didn't improve it much, but he did double the hotel staff over the course of like a minute, so I don't know. After a quick song, that snake guy shows up again. He's fixing for some revenge and... Oh no. I liked that guy, and then the show ends. Okay, that was actually pretty good. So yeah, that's Hasbeen Hotel, a clear passion project for sure, and honestly, I think it turned out pretty good. So what exactly is all the hate about? So at this point, when reviewing something, I usually like to dive a little bit deeper into the message, talk about some of the things I didn't like, or some fun facts about the thing, but in this case, I really don't have much to talk about on my own. Again, reviewing a cartoon is very outside my comfort zone. I'm not quite sure where to begin here, so instead, I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to ask some friends as well as scour the internet a bit and see if I can find some common criticisms of the show from other people, and see if I agree with it or have something to add. So give me one moment, and I'll be right back. Okay, I got a few pointers here I'd like to talk about. Point number 1, the jokes and premise are bad and overdone. Okay, so what appears to be the most common criticism I hear has to do with the overall premise of the show being something we've seen a million times apparently, as well as the particular style of humor this cartoon goes for being too shock value-y and juvenile for its own good. I think that's a good place to start. So for starters, yes, there are a lot of elements in Hasbeen that we have seen in other types of media before. Everything from a hotel to demons or the otherworldly, to Satan having a daughter and her being surprisingly wholesome, and don't even get me started on the number of fictional works involving hell either as a location or its central area the plot takes place in. Heck, even the character designs seem to take heavy inspiration from stuff sometimes. For example, I've had 2 separate friends compare the radio demon to the warden from Super Jail, which I guess I can kinda see. Hasbeen is very derivative at times, and it takes inspiration from a lot of different sources, and my response is, so what? Stuff takes inspiration from other stuff all the time, and heck, as long as something isn't just a complete ripoff of something trying to cash in on something else, I thought this was something that was generally accepted upon and seen as good, actually. Whenever I see something that clearly has a lot of work put into it like this does, I tend to look at the fact that it was heavily inspired by other works as more of a fun fact about the thing, as opposed to something we should hate it for. You know, kind of like how something like Cuphead is heavily inspired by Contra and cartoons of the 30s, almost to the point at which it's the only thing some people know about that game, yet everyone loves that game. Yet something like Enchanted Portals people are a bit more iffy on. By the way, is it weird that game kind of interests me? Maybe comparing the two could be a topic for a video one day. I don't know. Like I said, Hasbeen may be incredibly derivative of their projects, but given the amount of sheer effort that was put into it, to knock the entire thing for it just feels like a very bad faith criticism to me. What criticism I do feel is more valid, however, is not liking it because of its humor. Well, marginally. Okay, so Hasbeen is categorized as a black comedy, which is just a fancy way of saying there's a lot of dark humor in it. Or at the very least, humor about dark subject matter. Drugs, sex, death, you know. I've personally always enjoyed dark humor, and this is something I am very open about, but the problem people have with Hasbeen is that its particular flavor of dark humor isn't particularly highbrow. It's like what a teenager would think mature comedy would be. Like, oh hey, the main character cares more about a tiny bag of drugs than he does a human life, isn't that funny? Or, hey, let's pour hot coffee on this guy's genitals and watch him squirm in pain, what a riot. Or not to mention the countless jokes at the expense of how feminine angel dust looks for a guy. I mean, those can't be very politically correct, right?
Hey, up yours, drag show!
Dark comedy is difficult to do tastefully, and even when you're doing it right, you inevitably are still going to piss some people off, and I don't think the comedy here is particularly mature either. Like, there's no subtlety to it. Everyone is just kind of needlessly nasty to each other, and that's the comedy. It's slapstick, basically. Now, I have seen some people excuse this by saying that since the show is based in hell, we should expect everyone to be a jerk to each other, and while I don't think that's a completely invalid argument, I don't think it's the best one that could be made here. But is it weird that, to me personally, I feel this raunchy, lowbrow style of comedy actually kind of works in Hasbeen's favor? And the reason why is because of something I compared the show to during the first few seconds of my first viewing. Flash animations. This requires a bit of context here though. So, like a lot of people my age whose first exposure to the internet was as an edgy teenager in the late 2000s, I grew up with sites like Newgrounds, and something Newgrounds was kind of known for was its plethora of animations. But these animations weren't made by industry professionals with a board and a budget behind them, oh no. They were instead made by other edgy teenagers. A lot of these animations have not aged that well, to be honest, one major reason being because of their humor that tended to be incredibly juvenile.
Oh my, I'm getting a major hard-on. That must mean the enemy's near. There's no time to waste. Let's get the tank loaded up.
But they play an important role in animation and internet history, and it is something a lot of people, myself included, have an odd sense of nostalgia for. And that's why I believe the juvenile humor kind of works here for Hasbeen. The animation style already kind of reminds me of Flash stuff I loved as a kid, and I guess the humor does as well. Although I do get why people don't like it though. Like, I have to stress, I'm not saying it's an invalid opinion to dislike the show specifically because of its humor. The only thing I'd ask is not to see the forest for the trees, or however that expression goes, because there is a lot more to Hasbeen than just its comedy. Point number 2, the character designs and color palettes are bad. Okay, this one I think opens up the door to a bit more of an interesting discussion. So another common problem people tend to hate with this show is that they hate its character designs. And this one I can kind of see, selectively. Okay, so on their own, I actually really like the character designs of this show. It's not the kind of thing I'd ever make my own characters look like, but the designs are fun, unique, and interesting. However, okay, so this is something I've never really talked about before on this channel, mostly because it's not really my field of expertise, but I do know a lot of friends who are into it, and have talked to them a lot about it. Animation. And I'm not sure if this has an official term or not, but we're going to take a look at something I call character design optimization. Now, when you're designing a character, it's generally a smart idea to put more thought into it than just, does this character look cool or not? Another important factor is what you plan to do with that character. Are they a mascot? Are they for a visual novel? How will this character be rendered or drawn? Because any given character can look better or worse, not just based on the design itself, but what the character is featured in. For example, a character that might look good in 2D animation might look awful when you try to render them in 3D. There are exceptions to this, of course, but those tend to be heavily stylized. Specifically, what we are talking about in this example is digital 2D animation, which has heavy roots in traditional 2D animation, a style that's been around since 1908. So it's kind of obvious that there are going to be a lot of study and best practices by now for actually designing a character for any form of 2D animation. One of the biggest struggles for 2D animation is in order to make it look really good and smooth, you're probably going to have to manually draw your character hundreds, if not thousands of times. Tricks 2D animators use all the time to help them not go crazy while doing this is to keep the designs of their characters simple, without many needless details, so you can more easily draw them the same way consistently, as well as building them in such a way that you can separate them into simpler shapes while animating them. These types of tricks just make a character easier to animate in 2D. Like, have you ever noticed how a lot of animated characters have simplistic or even fingerless hands? It's because fingers are annoying to draw, and you don't always need a character to use their hands in each and every scene. Or how a lot of Hanna-Barbera characters happen to have some kind of shirt or tie or collar or neckerchief around their neck. Did you know that the reason they do this is so they can animate the head and body separately? It's such a clever trick that most people don't even notice, and 2D animators use tricks like this all the time. So how does this relate to Hasbeen? Well, the problem with the character design in this show is that pretty much each and every character is horribly optimized for 2D animation. So many characters always have these weird wiry proportions with added wings and capes and limbs and hair flying off in all directions. Some characters have details that are so oddly specific that they almost look like animation errors, and even stuff that should be as simple as some of the characters' head shapes are absurd. I mean, look at Angel Dust's head. That's not a head, that's a US state. Now, some people might be thinking that the fact that they were able to make a fluid half-hour cartoon with unoptimized characters like this work somehow is a testament to just how good they are at their craft. I kind of agree with that, however, it does heavily start to cross into just because you can doesn't mean you should territory. It's even kind of bad for the viewers too, because with characters this detailed, it's hard to latch onto and tell them apart after a while. I know some friends who have told me that a lot of the characters in the show look the same to them, and yeah, that's a potential consequence of not optimizing your characters. Honestly, they almost look like they would fit better in a webcomic or an artsy indie RPG, I'm not kidding. Another problem people have with the characters is that all of them practically share the same color palette as well. Something kind of clever people do in character design in general is if you're making something with multiple characters in it, simply making them different colors can really help the viewer tell them apart. But every character in this show is some kind of combination or shade of red or black or white or pink, which makes them unfortunately blend in a lot. Not only to themselves, but also to the backgrounds, which are often red or black or white or pink, or occasionally just made up of random extras, which also have the same design problems the main characters have. Everything from their over-designed designs to the samey color palettes. It's very confusing, and combining this with how fast-paced the show is, it can lead to a final product that is incredibly difficult to read and follow, both from an animation and a plot standpoint. And yeah, I think that's a genuine problem. I really don't know what the solution here would be, though. I mean, the thing is already out and the character designs are set in stone, so I really don't see how they can fix a lot of this aside from maybe changing the designs over time slowly like they did with characters like Pikachu. Maybe they could just make the backgrounds more interesting so the main characters pop more against them. I don't know. I get that it's set in hell so you want to keep that fire and brimstone look, but that doesn't mean you can't make the locations more diverse in terms of color. Diablo figured out how to do this. Heck, even Minecraft figured out how to do this. So yeah, I'd say I'd agree with this criticism. Let's move on. Point number 3. The show has bad LGBT representation. Or does it? Okay, this point I'm not throwing in particularly because it's a common criticism, but because it's something I've probably seen an equal number of people both praise and criticize the show for. And it's something I kind of want to talk about myself here. Before we get into this though, I, like most straight cis guys who try to talk about this topic on YouTube, would like to mention something real quick before we get into this. While I do very much support LGBT, I am not LGBT myself, nor do I consider myself an expert in this topic. So excuse any ignorance on my part you may hear during this section, whether it be me misunderstanding certain concepts as I talk about them, or the potential use of politically incorrect language as I'm describing stuff. I'm just one guy here, and I'm actually very much welcome to any corrections on things I may get wrong here. So with that being said, let's jump into it. So as society as a whole becomes more accepting towards LGBT identities and sexualities, we're inevitably going to see a lot more representation for it in pop culture and media. Some portrayals are definitely more tasteful than others, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. As I established earlier, Charlie and Vaggie are confirmed to be a lesbian couple in the show, and quite a number of other major characters have a fair share of what I've seen referred to as queer coding, which is basically a fancy term for when a character has a lot of traits that can be seen as stereotypically LGBT, but may or may not be confirmed to be LGBT themselves. So Hasbeen has its fair share of LGBT characters and representation, and the audience reception of them feels very mixed to say the least. Charlie and Vaggie's relationship feels so genuine, it's something I can't wait to see explored more. Hasbeen has a gay, drug-addicted, sexist, transphobic prostitute and a lesbian named Vaggie. You guys really defending this shit? I happen to be a feminine gay dude into cross-dressing, and I have never in my life came across a single movie or show featuring any male character like me in these ways, until Hasbeen Hotel, that is. Does Hasbeen have a single LGBT character that isn't portrayed as a deviant or a sexual predator? Well, I'd argue it's more than just the gay characters that get a little sexual harassy, if you know what I mean. I found this Drake meme I kinda like. Actually, this might be a good jumping off point. A criticism I sometimes saw when researching this is that a lot of people don't like the show because it has homophobic characters and moments. Let's use this reporter as an example.
I'd say it's a pleasure to meet you, but that would be a lie. You can put that away. I don't touch the gays.
Okay, that's a pretty homophobic thing to say. Now, let's dissect that a bit. This character may be homophobic, however, if you actually pay attention to how she's written and portrayed in the cartoon, you'll notice that she's always written as a very nasty person. She's awful to everyone she talks to, not just the gays. What this line serves is just to add another layer to her nastiness. This is something you'll see quite often when certain characters say problematic things. Because, well, even when the quote-unquote good guys say awful lines about each other, you'll notice it's never glorified.
Fine, I'll try. Just don't get your taco in a twist, baby.
Was that you trying to be sexist or racist?
Whatever pisses you off more.
And that none of these characters are supposed to be role models anyway in the first place. The hell setting also kinda adds to this. As, you know, you'd expect a lot of bad people by default to be there. I mentioned earlier that this isn't the greatest excuse for the characters' shortcomings when I talked about their humor, but I personally believe it's a bit more valid of an argument here. In fact, out of the entire cast, I'd argue that the only character to have truly altruistic goals is Charlie, who ironically is one of the gay characters, and also, by the way, the only character who didn't come to hell as a result of her own actions, but because she was born there. That's actually a pretty neat attention to detail if it was intentional. And then there's the discussion of the characters being poor representation. Angel Dust, for example, is seen by a lot of people as no more than an offensive stereotype of an effeminate gay, or a drag queen, or a sex worker. The thing is, though, I was able to find the occasional person who ironically liked the character for those exact traits. You know, something that's always been a bit tricky about representation is that it can be interpreted in different ways by different people. What some people might believe is offensive might be beloved by others. For example, I'm kind of reminded of a story I heard a few years ago where the Looney Tunes character Speedy Gonzales was criticized for being a Mexican stereotype, to the point at which Warner Brothers felt the need to take his cartoons off the air. However, little did they know that the character is actually pretty beloved in Latin America, because despite being a pretty blatant stereotype, at his best he also represents unabashed Mexican culture. It's not the greatest example, but I feel it's kind of a similar idea here, but instead for effeminate LGBT men who are into cross-dressing. I'm willing to bet that's a much smaller demographic, to be honest, but the simple fact of the matter is that some people do relate to him, and who are we to take that away from them? You know, I was talking with some other people about the subject, and apparently this topic of LGBT representation goes way deeper than just the cartoon. Apparently there's some supplementary material to this whole show where we learn that, like, Angel Dust is actually bi, for example. I mean, heck, the wiki for the show has a whole page that just lists the LGBT characters. I'm starting to think that at this point, if we were to explore deeper into the subject, I would have to get way more into the lore of Hasbeen, which unfortunately isn't really the point of this video. So I think I'm going to leave it here. Feel free to leave your thoughts on this below if you'd like, because I'm actually kind of curious to hear more points of views on this one. Did you enjoy the representation, or did you think it was too stereotypy or something? For now, though, let's just move on. Point number 4. The creator is problematic. What? Okay, I'm willing to bet at least a few are wondering if I was going to bring up this at any point or not. I am, and the biggest reason why is so half the comments aren't just, hey Game Dog, you aware of how bad this creator is? And honestly, I neither need nor want that. So the creator of Hasbeen Hotel, as well as a variety of other web cartoons, is a person by the name of Vivzipop. Or Vivzipop? I'm not quite sure how you're meant to say that. She is credited as the writer, screenplayer, composer, and director for Hasbeen, and some of the characters in the show have beta designs dating back to as early as 2015. Like, she's clearly been online for a while. Apparently, she also has some controversies dating back as early as those times too. And oh my god, let me tell you, I could not go one day doing research for the script without stumbling across someone bringing up how bad of a person she is, apparently. Like, some people really hate this creator. Like, it got a little comedic after a while. And even doing research on this part is freaking impossible. Apparently there's like this big infamous thread about the stuff she's allegedly done, but I can't seem to find it. Maybe it was deleted, maybe I'm just dumb, I don't know. But like, the gist I was able to find is that she, and keep in mind this is all hearsay because I am not digging into this any more than I have to. We have everything from trying to merchandise Hasbeen before it was actually finished, which tends to not make people very happy. She's been called every name in the book, including racist, homophobic, transphobic, you know the list. She's been called a tracer, she's been accused of pedophilia, because every fucking web artist has been accused of pedophilia. Apparently she also drew fan art for Blair White once. Okay, that one's gonna lose to some progressive brownie points. I don't know what you want me to say, man. Surely by now you folks must realize that we do separate art from artist on this channel, and even with all these accusations, not all, but most people I've talked with about them have admitted that at least a few of these are greatly exaggerated, because of course they are, it's the internet, and others she has apologized for. I'm not going to sit here and argue for or against if any of these stories are true. I'm just going to encourage that if any of this does interest you, to keep an open mind if you do choose to do research on this, and also not to harass anyone. For me personally, I see a creator of something being controversial as more of a fun fact or discussion point about the thing you should keep in mind while analyzing it, as opposed to a complete turnoff. Because at the end of the day, she still masterminded a pretty awesome cartoon. Heck, this might even explain why Hasbeen is so controversial in the first place. While doing research on these points, I saw some detractors for the show spreading claims and outright lies about what's actually in the show. And it always gave me the impression that the person never actually saw it, but it was made by that evil, evil Vivziepop, so it's a waste of my time to even give it a chance or something. Separating art from artist is actually something I do personally take pretty seriously, to the point at which maybe I should just go ahead and make a video about it or a discussion about it one day, but right in the middle of 2 cartoon reviews maybe isn't the most appropriate time for it. So those are the 4 most common criticisms I saw with Hasbeen. Personally, I do agree with some of them, while others either didn't really bother me or involve topics that were a bit over my head. I'm glad I watched it though, and if this ever does get picked up by a studio or the creators make more episodes on YouTube, I'd probably consider checking those out too. I think the last thing I'd like to mention before moving on is 2 other short cartoons made by the same people called Hell of a Boss and Holidays. As I was talking with friends about this video, these 2 names popped up quite often, to a point at which I figured I'd check them out myself. I mean, they're not that long anyway. One's kind of a spin-off thing of Hasbeen, the other is a silent film, kind of. I like them. I kind of liked Hasbeen more overall, but I can see why some people consider them to be better than the project they clearly put the most work into. You sometimes see that with these smaller projects. They tend to be a bit more nuanced in certain ways, and some people appreciate that. So, there we go. Let's move on to cans of Outlabels. So how does one begin to describe a cartoon like cans of Outlabels? Well, so you know, over the past several years we've had a bit of a trend of big names within various industries, typically either the gaming or the cartoon industry, go to Kickstarter. And basically the idea is that they want to make their own project or have some kind of big vision in mind that they would prefer to make with either a smaller team or without those evil corporate overlords breathing down their neck at every decision. Some of these projects turn out pretty great, while some of them not so much, but what we're talking about here is an instance of this by Canadian animator John Kricfalusi. I think that's how you say it, or John K as he's typically referred to as nowadays. He's worked on a lot of stuff since the late 70s, actually, his most popular creation by far being Ren and Stimpy, which is a show I did not watch growing up, so I'm not going to know much about this kind of subject matter going in. His art style prides itself on being very over-exaggerated, cartoony, and as odd as this might sound, kind of gross as well. Like, as in that's part of the selling point. His art style is deliberately ugly, which is interesting to say the least. I mean, just look at how he draws The Simpsons, for crying out loud. Oh boy, love it or hate it is going to be interesting, isn't it? Well, let's just jump into this. my goodness, this already reminds me of really old cartoons I loved as a kid. The main character's face on the opening screen, the characters being introduced through stills. I kind of like this so far. Based on a true story. Keep that in mind as we watch this, by the way. What the... Huh? What? That is the most uncomfortable opening shot I have ever seen. Why does his, like, nose and mouth shrink faster than the rest of his body does? Also, what is this 2.5D perspective? 2.5D can look pretty good if done well, but this just feels oddly uncanny here. So we have a father and his two sons, George Liquor, I hardly know her, and Slab and Ernie. The frick are these names? George is the kind of guy who's always looking for a bargain, so he bought a bunch of unlabeled cans at the grocery store for practically nothing, and is now showing his recent shopping excursion to his two kids. He concludes that one of the cans must have beef stew in it, and that's what's for lunch today. After all, whatever is inside the can, they have to eat it, because God forbid we waste food. You know what's actually inside the can, though?
What's wrong? It's beef stew, isn't it?
There's a face in the can!
A face! Who is canning faces? I am very concerned.
Well, I guess we're having a face for lunch.
Wait, what?
Are you gonna eat that face? Or do I have to take my belt off?
I'm calling CPS. Oh, ew, why is it green? George is really insistent that they eat this face for some reason. He says he's going to go to the bathroom. If the kids don't eat it by the time he gets back, there'll be consequences. So one of the kids, I can't tell them apart, gets the idea to grab the cat, very violently I might add. Also, the cat's name is Cigarettes. That's an awful name for an animal.
Wow!
What? Rubbing his butt on the chair gave him the ability to talk. That's all I can interpret from what just happened. They get the idea to ask the cat to eat the face since they don't want to, and the cat doesn't want to either. Well, nuts to that plan, I guess. But suddenly, they hear a visitor at the door. It's the one, the only...
It's Donald Bastard!
Donald Bastard! You know, famed b-ball star Donald Bastard. I have to ask, is this character like a John K. in-joke? Because he's written like I'm supposed to know who he is. One of the kids concludes that he must be a face-eating type of animal based on... nothing? Pretty much nothing? Oh my goodness, he was right. But wait, you know who conveniently has a face that needs to be eaten right about now? That's right, these two. We should invite him in. So they take the duck ex machina out of the dining table where he proceeds to eat the face in the grossest way you could possibly animate it, and then they throw him out. Just in time too, because George just finished his business, and he's overjoyed that the face is eaten.
You're good, boys.
Maybe a little too overjoyed. What the heck is going on? As a reward, he decides that he's going to open up another can, which scares them into... doing that. And that's the end. What the heck did I just watch? Also, why does it feel like I've been here so much longer despite that being a third the length of Hasbeen? Oh god, where do I even begin here? I'm not sure if you can tell by my voice as I was doing that, but I really did not like this. Not at all. I liked Hasbeen way more than this. Although, let's try to decipher why exactly I didn't like this. Okay, so the first thing that kind of crossed my mind after finishing this was, how in the world is this based off a true story? Well, remember when I said that this was a Kickstarter-funded project? Conveniently, the quote-unquote true story is right on there, and it is quite a read, to the point in which I kind of want to paraphrase it a bit here for this video, because I feel like it did help me understand what exactly is going on here a little more. So the story behind the short is based off of a story from John K's childhood, and specifically something his dad did all the time as a kid. John K's dad, who, by the way, he describes as, and I quote, an old-school, manly Republican sort of guy who thinks today's Republicans are wimps. Okay, boomer. Is the kind of guy who would teach his family to save money whenever possible. And one of these ways was to never, under any circumstances, buy name brand. One of his favorite ways to save money was to go to the clearance section of his local grocery store, where they would always have these damaged, unlabeled cans that no one could recall what was inside of them, so they sold them for like a nickel or a dime each. Mr. K would then buy these and then insist on having whatever is inside these crazy grab bags of foodstuffs for meals. Apparently he would do these little tricks to make the whole things more palatable, I guess, stuff that actually appears in the short, such as using math to try and guess what's inside the can, or using that old, you know how many starving Africans would kill for food like this line. I've talked to a couple people about the story, and something I sometimes heard was, wait, I've shopped in the clearance section of my local grocery store hundreds of times, and I've never seen unlabeled cans for sale. Well, same here, though I did a little bit more research, and I came to learn that this is actually kind of a generational thing. You have to keep in mind that John K is actually a bit on the older side as far as modern-day animators go. Childhood for him was around the 60s or 70s. I even talked to some family I know who are around the same age as him, and they confirmed that, yeah, this is totally something stores did back then. I imagine they must have stopped doing this for health and safety reasons, however. I mean, cans are a very versatile way to store anything from soup to fruit to, paint to, dead cats, apparently. Yeah, I can see some complaints arising from that. You know what? I feel like I have a new appreciation for this cartoon after knowing the story behind it, but does that mean I like it? No. Oh my god, no. I'm genuinely trying to think of things I enjoyed about this short, but anything I can think of is either half-heartedly thought through, or it's something I enjoyed ironically. Maybe I just don't get it. I mean, like I said earlier, I didn't really grow up with Ren and Stimpy or really any of John K's cartoons as a kid, and I've never really liked gross-out humor in general. Maybe this would feel a bit nostalgic if you did have that kind of background. I don't know. Okay, so something a couple friends told me about John K that I genuinely find kind of interesting is that he apparently has this philosophy that in order to maximize exaggeration and cartooniness, you should never draw a character the same way twice, and even intentionally go off-model as much as possible, while incorporating as much movement as possible, even when it doesn't make sense to. This kind of philosophy has to fundamentally break at least a couple of the 12 rules of animation, but it is experimental, and I feel like you can do some interesting stuff with that idea given enough planning. I can see the potential in here, I really can. George Licker, for example, is drawn in tons of exaggerated ways. He can look exaggeratedly scary, he can look exaggeratedly distressed, there's even a point where he looks borderline cute for a couple seconds, but at the same time, there are moments where the quote-unquote movement of the character just consists of sliding his drawing across the frame, and it looks so lazy. The backgrounds are all kinds of inconsistent, to a point of being distracting. Sometimes they're made from this ugly 2.5D modeling, sometimes they look like digital paintings, other times they even look a bit like Earthbound battle backgrounds. I even heard somewhere that some of them are straight up taken from Ren and Stimpy, which he might not have the rights to use anymore. This cartoon did that thing Hasbeen did that I didn't like, where pretty much every movement is accompanied by a sound effect. While it makes more sense here since the cartoon is supposed to be way more toony, they have a tendency to repeat and reuse said sound effects all throughout the mere 10-minute short, and again, it comes off as so lazy. Like they were added at the last minute as opposed to created with the cartoon in mind, or even created at all, as a lot of them sound like stock effects even, downloaded straight off a royalty-free website. There are so many anticipation and follow-through fails in this thing. I can't get over this part where for a second it looks like one of the kids is going to bowl the cat out of the kitchen in a fun, cartoony, exaggerated motion, but instead he just violently kicks him into the air, at which point he just slumps into the doggy door. There are parts where the audio feels oddly chopped somehow.
You're good, boys.
I swear, I didn't edit that. That's actually how it sounds. You know, now that I think about it, why didn't they just flush the face down the sink or something? See, that's how you draw a can. Was it really that hard to just, I don't know, maybe use the 3D models as a reference and then remove the jarring 2.5D thing entirely? Because it just doesn't look good. It really, really does not. Whose hands are those? Those look like cat claws, but they aren't the same color as Cigarette's hands. I could go on, I really could. Everything from the nitpicks to the fundamental problems, Cans of Outlabels is a rancid piece of media. The visual style, the animation quality, the voice acting, the script, the sound direction, it's all a complete mess that borderline feels rushed or under budget. But I know it isn't, because not only did it exceed its funding goal on Kickstarter, which I know isn't a deal breaker since Kickstarter creators tend to underestimate how much they actually need, but then I also see that it took 7 years to create and release, despite advertising that it would only take under a year at first. That is beyond a little delayed. That kind of time gap typically entails either a complete development hell or some serial procrastination. Some people have told me that John K is actually kind of notorious within the industry for being very difficult to work with, so maybe that might have something to do with it. That and maybe some of the allegations against Crick Falusi around this time. I said earlier that I'm always the type to separate art from artists, but please, if you ever get the chance, look up some of the shit he allegedly got up to in the late 90s that was only exposed a few years ago. People who know about this guy probably know what I'm getting at here. It is truly awful. How do you take an industry name, over half a decade, and over $100,000 and little to no studio intervention to make a 10-minute cartoon and this is it? Was this truly his vision? Looking at some of the stuff he's worked on, it's clear he's always been that type of guy to push what you can and cannot get away with a cartoon, and I can always respect that, especially as a Ralph Bakshi fan, but all this shows is that maybe he is better off the kind of creator of a few corporate restrictions to keep him in check. God, maybe the internet is right sometimes. What an absolute disaster. And not even an interesting kind of absolute disaster like The Room or Sonic 06, which coincidentally I have been playing recently. It is really as bad as people said it was. It's just bad though. I feel like the best I could say is that I feel it make for good YouTube poop material, but my god, I never want to watch this ever again. Feel it make for good YouTube poop material. Feel it make for good YouTube poop material. Feel it make for good YouTube poop material.
At least it's going on the TV. Wait, no, too far. Okay, stop zooming in. No.
What's with all the Uncle George?
Creeper Amen shirts and mug.
These here are beat and now the slosh test.
Boner ankle 3. There's a
yip
in the can.
I was back in the system and spent days outside of the sunlight, trying to the accomplishments of the sun.
So why don't we send it to him?
Take a crap.
Hey, Baggy?
It's Donald.
I'll open another can.
The werehog was a mistake.
Oh, I'm alive! I'm alive!
Well, that was a lot of fun. I think this is the point of the video where I slow things down a bit and try to bring things to a close. And a topic I'd like to end this on is listing a couple other web cartoons that I stumbled upon while making this video. I feel like this could be a good opportunity to show off some other projects since I can't really see myself talking about cartoons again anytime soon. And as much as I'd hate to do this, I'd actually like to start this section off with a dishonorable mention. Okay, so a bit of a behind the scenes with this video. When I first talked to some friends about potential cartoons I could pick for this video, Hasbeen Hotel and Cans of Outlabels were the two most common requests I got. But a close third was Isabelle Ruins Everything by Hot Diggity Demon. Heck, why not? I like Animal Crossing. So I looked it up and I'm gonna be honest, I like the setup a lot. It's basically a short about, hey, what if the people running the actual town of Animal Crossing were awful at their job? And hey, even one of my favorite villagers appears in the opening shot. Cranston is wonderful. But then it kind of lost me when it became literally like 4 minutes, which by the way is about half the runtime of shot reverse shot conversation between Isabel and the player character that consists of nothing but political commentary for some reason, all ending in the punchline that Isabel is a communist.
Thank you for watching this cartoon. I've been working on this cartoon for almost 2 years.
2 years? Hey, if I may ask, how many months did it take you to come up with this joke?
The whole thing was crazy, then this black guy hit me with a hammer and broke my arm.
He hit you with a hammer?
Yeah, and it was weird because he was like, flat like paper?
As a Game & Watch main, I totally have not heard that one before. I don't know, I can see why people hate it, but I just didn't think there was enough here that I could talk about it for as long as I did with the other 2 cartoons I reviewed. On top of that, going back to those friends, it came to my attention that this is more of a case of the creator being controversial as opposed to any one cartoon he made, and that's not quite what I was looking for this video, to be honest. I checked out his videography just because I was curious at that point, and it turns out he actually made some stuff I've stumbled upon before that I really liked. Like, for example, this video where he took the trailer for the Sonic movie, you know, like the creepy one, and then edited over it to make it look like a Roger Rabbit thing. Is it bad that I kind of like his art style too? Okay, I found something juicy. So you know those like Rant Sona videos that have become sort of a meme over the past few years? You know, the ones where you like draw some visual novel-esque sprite of your furry OC and then put him on a background, talk about some bullcrap like, I don't know, forced diversity for like 30 minutes or something. Well, apparently he actually makes those. I'll give him one thing, he actually animates them, but with such clickbaity titles as Why Women Shouldn't Be Ghostbusters, in all caps. I mean, the movie was bad, but Jesus Christ, I can see why some people would hate him. Rogue Run is about abortion. What? Seriously, find me one person who makes Rant Sona videos who isn't controversial in at least some kind of way. Apparently he's done some pretty edgy stuff on Twitter too. I'm willing to accept that these are just old bad attempts at edgy comedy that he doesn't stand by anymore. I mean, heck, I feel like most YouTubers can relate to that in some kind of way. Oh god, this is the guy who made that infamous Apu video? I've been meaning to watch that one actually. I'm behind on that controversy. So, long story short, I omitted talking about one of this guy's cartoons mostly because I wanted to look at something that was controversial, as opposed to someone that was controversial, if that makes sense. There's clearly a rabbit hole here with this guy, but maybe I'm not the best guy to be diving into it for the purpose of a video. Okay, let's talk about some more fun stuff now. While working on this video, I found this short called Boomerang in a Gunfight by Pymations. I know so many people who follow this guy on Twitter. I knew he did art, but apparently he does animations as well. This is a comedy short about 2 incompetent cowboy sheriffs trying to do anything right. This might be my favorite thing I came across while working on this thing. I love the characters and the animation style, and it might have some of the best comedic timing I've seen in quite some time.
I was a cashier there, and sometimes I helped Mr. McCallum hide his fortune from the IRS, whoever they are.
This is a bit of a weird one, but I'd like to show off this animation I found called Literally by Joe, or Joe the Gran. This cartoon is kind of unbelievable to me because it manages to hit what I thought was an impossible balance between that mean-spirited early 2000s Newgrounds style of comedy, yet at the same time feel pretty modern somehow too. Oh, also, apparently is a furry. I bet you didn't know that. Speaking of something weird, check out Jamir at Home by Alexander Luvenaz. This cartoon is my kind of weird. You're gonna be a bit creeped out during your first viewing, but if you're up for it, try and, like, dive a bit deeper and see if you can find some sort of hidden meaning or symbolism behind it all. My personal theory is that Jamir is either a kid with an overactive imagination, or an adult with some kind of thing going on that causes him to act younger than he actually is, such as age regression, or heck, even like autism, and that he lives alone. However, due to his overactive childlike imagination, he makes up fantasies in his head to make life around him less boring. The enormous rooms and hallways that make him feel smaller by comparison, as well as how a lot of the skits have to do with things children like, such as dogs or toilet humor, I believe kind of add to this theory. I encourage you to watch this yourself and see what you make from it. Okay, you guys want something a little less weird? I think it's time for something a little less weird. This is Hair Love by Matthew A. Cherry and Bruce W. Smith. It's a really candid and wholesome story about a dad trying to do his kid's hair, and it's just so much fun. Apparently this, like Cans of Outlabels, was also a Kickstarter-funded project, and spoiler alert, this one is much better. Like, there's no question about it. I believe this one even won some awards too, which is super cool.
You're doing an amazing job. Yay, you did it! That was so much fun. I knew you could do it.
Another one I found was Bigtop Burger by Worth the Kids. This one is about a bunch of clowns that run a food truck? Okay. This one's actually a bit of a series of shorts about the crazy antics they get up to while either on the job or driving to the job. The character design and humor reminds me a lot of Earthbound, if that makes sense. I know a lot of stuff reminds me of Earthbound, but I really do mean it here. I don't know if it's the proportions of the characters or the deliberately campy voice work, but it all just kind of does. It's all just so wonderful too. If they continue this series, I'll probably be watching it for a very long time.
May I have a simple burger, please?
Oh, coming right up. Hey, Tim, can I get a simple burger?
You may not.
One second, sir.
And the last thing I'd like to shout out is done by a name you might recognize if you've been watching me for a while. Do you remember a few years ago I Let's Played a short RPG Maker game called Mischief Kittens by Karpo? Well, did you know that the creator of that makes storytime animations now? They're pretty great, go check them out.
One thing that's great about guilds is that they can help you level up and get better gear, but no amount of experienced players made me better at the game.
You'll be able to find links to a lot of this in the description below, and that's the video, I guess. Thank you all for watching, and I'm very glad I took a look at these two cartoons. They were quite interesting. And as per usual, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, feel free to give it a like, because these big videos do take a while to make, so it really does help. And I think that'll be it for now. Thanks for watching.